Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get the meeting started.
Yeah.
I read something this morning I just share real quickly, and it said, "Today's a wonderful day. I haven't seen it before." So I think we'll start off the day that way. It's kind of an interesting devotional. So anyway, so Mr. Moore, need you to roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Barham, Mr. Bento,
Here.
Mr. Peterman,
Here.
Mr. Reineberg,
Here.
Mr. Toops,
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and noted that Mr. Barham is on his way. He's
Yes.
almost here. Okay, so we need to go over the minutes of October and December, I guess.
Well, I'll back up if I can, Chair. There was a meeting held last week. Nothing was voted on. And the minutes were discussed. Unless the individuals who are not here have some questions or concerns about the minutes, you all could just vote to accept the minutes.
Move to accept.
No, second.
All right. So,
Okay, no other discussion. Roll call, please.
And Peterman, Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg,
Yes.
Mr. Toops,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then we also have to, has everyone had a chance to look at the financials? And I guess that's the same situation?
Yes.
Okay, they were discussed but could not be voted on?
And there was one thing, you gave additional information, and it might be nice to just tell that to everybody, because you did follow up, and that was nice of you to do.
Thank you. In October, there was, I believe, 6,250, yes, contractual service, basically is for the audit fee, for the CPA firm.
Right.
For the FY18 audit,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Is there any other, so we need a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Okay.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
No.
Mr. Moore?
All right. And we're approving all three sets of financials?
Yes,
Is that-
sir.
Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Do we need to make the motion as such?
Yes, I mean, the motion itself was just to approve financials.
The
it's
three sets,
understood.
but I
It's
just wanted
understood
to
on the
make
record
sure
that-
that we had that comment about last week.
Yes, okay.
All right.
Good.
Well, Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg,
Yes.
Mr. Toops,
Yes.
and Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next one. Do we have any old business that anyone would like to discuss this morning?
What I will say just quickly is with regards to your disclosure statements, just make sure you turn those. I see a number of envelopes here. Make sure everyone turns those in to Ms. White today or as soon as possible. And that's all I have unless we have something else. And then if you so move, I'll go to new business, which is you have a yellow card attached to your information. That card is with regards to your parking. So that is your parking pass, so just utilize that when you attend the meetings every month.
Thank you. And then do we have any other new business? Would we like to hear from the port at this time? And then we can move into our other.
The port gave an update, I believe, at the last meeting,
Sure.
but if you could briefly.
Yeah, briefly, I'll just touch on a few things that I touched on last week. Calendar year 2018 was a record year for the port, another record year, so we're very fortunate. Volume was steady. We didn't have significant growth as we had other years, year over year, but yet we still handled a record amount of volume. Construction at Virginia National Gateway in Portsmouth continues to make tremendous strides. You look at it today, it's hard to even envision that facility not being built out to the point in which you see it today, because it looks full. It looks like it's always been that way. The 4 new ship-to-shore cranes that we received about 3 weeks ago obviously have been offloaded from the vessel in which they arrived on, and the commissioning and installation is fully underway with an expectation that they will be put into service probably before April, but I think that's the timeline to have those up and running. Those are the 4 largest ship-to-shore cranes anywhere in the Americas, right here in Portsmouth. So that's something to really be proud of. We're really lucky to have something of that nature, but really it's fortunate to have a facility like VIG and the love of automation and just the efficiency we're gaining from that. We continue to utilize PMT, Portsmouth Marine Terminal, thank goodness, because that facility has really served as a relief valve for a lot of the freight we continue to see in the growth. And while we're undertaking a construction project, we're so very fortunate to have that facility where we can take freight that's sort of being shifted from one terminal to the other. So again, it's been very, very nice and a very productive facility. One other plug I'll put out there coming up, and this is maybe for the city of Portsmouth. It's been really run by Parks and Rec, I believe, and it's the Aid to Local Port program. And this is a program where the Port of Virginia every year has $1 million to provide to the local waterways and the communities that are so fortunate to have access to local waterways. So as the PPIC looks at the properties within the commission, the ones that are on the water and that are obviously controlled by the city, if there are opportunities or projects that you think might work, let us know, and I obviously can have a conversation offline with Robert and your staff on what that program looks like. In the past, some of the just to give you an idea of what we funded here in the city. Most recently, we helped fund a pier over at City Park, which allows for citizens to obviously access the water and enjoy fishing there, as well as we've provided dollars and funds here along the waterfront and one time port side and stuff like that. So just want to put it out there. We have a meeting coming up on the 14th of February, so that's why I say it today, because on the 14th of February we kind of have I'll call open house, where all the communities within the Commonwealth who have interest in this program come forward, and usually Portsmouth, Mr. Furlow has many times come forward and presented what those projects might be for the city. But just want to put that out there as a plug. So that's all I've got for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We gotta
Yep,
go into closed session.
we do. We have to. We love you.
This should probably be by board member, but I could,
Do we have some business that needs to go into closed session for?
just the top part.
It's a little bit different.
Need a motion
Yeah.
to go into closed session?
So moved.
I think there's a formal motion, if you could.
Yeah, we're gonna read it.
Oh, okay. You want me to read it out?
Just the top piece of it.
Okay, Portsmouth Boarding Industrial Commission, motion for a closed meeting. I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711 8.3 for the purpose of discussing disposition of publicly held property interest where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically regarding 3920 Burton's Point Road.
Second. Any discussion? Robert, please, roll call.
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Bento? Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg?
Yes.
Mr. Toops? Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
We are in closed session.
Second?
So moved.
Okay, second.
All right.
Roll call, please.
And Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Bento?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg? Mr. Toops?
Yes.
We are in open session.
Thank you. So now we can discuss the resolution.
Yes.
So we've had our discussion in closed session. Does anyone have any further discussion in open session as to any further thoughts to providing a path forward on the sale of this property with going into a letter of intent with Crofton Company?
And development agreement.
And
correct?
agreement, yeah, this actually authorizes signing an agreement for that price.
Do we need a motion on that, or?
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Second? Okay.
Wallace. All right, Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Bento?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg?
Yes.
Mr. Toops?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace. All right, motion carries.
Very good.
All right.
I just want to thank Economic Development. You guys did a great job. I think, as Mr. Toop said, that's what this body is for. It's wonderful to move forward on something. I think the discussion we had was good and stimulating, and going forward we need to look at total uses of properties. And I think that's a good thing. I think in this one, we vetted that pretty well. But I think that's a great consideration. But thank you guys so much for the business retention. Having a business in Portsmouth for a long time, it's nice to see that happening. And know that all the guys that have businesses in Portsmouth will certainly support you and help you anytime you need. So thank you for bringing this to the table.
Thank you. I would like to specifically point out Mr. Donahue and thank him for his work on this project. He has worked continuously to make this happen and bring this to fruition. So I want to thank him specifically for making this happen. And I would like to take the opportunity to, just quickly talk about some of the very things that the board has discussed. We had a very successful year last year, as I would consider as an economic development group. We had, when it comes to business retention, we conducted as a small staff 83 different what we call biz visits, meeting with existing businesses that led to 5 different expansion projects. This is just one of them. We also, from a standpoint of new investment, had what I would consider a record year over the last several years of $104 million in new investment in the city. So we have done what I think is a great start with the new staff, with these 2 gentlemen coming on in July. They have really hit the ground running, and you will hear me say time and time again, I know Councilman Moody has heard me say this several times, I have the best staff in the city. We are looking to expand that staff. As a matter of fact, we have interviews later today. But we have an opportunity to really grow. I would say pay attention to the City Council retreat later on this week. But we have some exciting things going on the waterfront. We've been in the news just a little bit. Maybe you've heard of this small thing called a casino that potentially could happen on our waterfront. We are very excited about. We still are looking at the opportunity and the possibilities of relocating City Hall and completely renovating and redeveloping what we consider to be the Crawford Gateway into our city. We also, as an EDA, so you all know, have received back into our coffers, if you will, almost 65 acres on Victory Boulevard, which is the former Victory Village property. So we will look to redevelop and develop that as well. And we will continue to foster the relationship with the existing businesses and the 2 groups that we have, the 2 boards that we serve, the EDA and PPIC. We see you all as a key member of our economic development arm to make sure that we can do our job. You all make our job easy by having meetings once a month and having the opportunity to bring opportunities like this to you all. So we will be utilizing you all, and we'll have more discussions. We were just made aware of a project that we have landed that will bring significant investment and jobs to the city. I can't tell you, unfortunately, what that is right now. But when I tell you where it is, who it is, and what it is, you'll be very excited. And we will hopefully be able to make that announcement maybe next month. We will see. But we are on track now. I don't like giving out numbers, but again, I want to brag on my staff. We are at a point now to where we are 29 days into the year, and we are already, not counting that small thing called a casino, not counting some of the other developments or the waterfront, but we are already over what we were last year of $100 and some million, and we are only 29 days into the year. So,
So y'all taking the rest of the year off?
probably. That's dope. I'm gonna tell Councilman to plug his ears. No, we have worked hard. We have worked tirelessly. Staff is done, and my job is to make staff's job as easy as possible, and I've tried to do that as best as possible. But I will say that we can't get this done without you all, without the EDA, without the city attorney's office. Mr. Ashby, Mr. Miller, Ms. Patel, they have all been great in helping us do what we do. So we are excited about 2019. We are even more excited about 2020. And again, we want to say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any?
I have one thing. and it relates to this meeting, and I am, there's a thing in Hampton Roads and in Norfolk and in Virginia Beach called the Military Economic Development Advisory Committee. And right now they're trying to regionalize, the Norfolk one and the Virginia Beach one, and do away with them and create a Hampton Roads Military Economic Development Advisory Committee. And just yesterday I went to the Norfolk one, and they were Admiral Chip Rock, who is the East Coast regional commander. He owns everything from North Carolina to basically Wallops Island, for military facilities. He owns it all. And the shipyard is kind of like the owner or the tenant of St. Julian's Creek. And, and one of the things that he talked about, or they talked about, and we're not members of this thing, but right now I talked to, Elizabeth Primus and how do we want to do this? And I talked to Mr. Moore at the same time. And, since I'm a retired naval officer, and, one of the things to be a member of this committee, you have to either be a retired naval officer, you have to be a retired senior executive service guy, GS-14 or above, or a chief, senior chief, master chief petty officer to even just sit on this thing. So basically I'm just sitting there as a visitor right now, but they would really like to have us, and create a regional effort. And so when I talked to Elizabeth, she came up, and I talked to her about this after one of these meetings, and she said, well, how about Chesapeake, since they're not, a member of anything? Then she says, how does MEDAC's efforts result in actionable efforts, and who do they work for? And the answer is they work for, right now they work for the city of Norfolk or the city of Virginia Beach, and they're going to have to change their charter if they become regional. So who do they work for? They'll be working for the city councils of various things. What does the current charter look like, which I provided her a copy of the current charter, and I think you have one too, I think. And what would a combined charter look like, and who would they report to was her next question, and so I think I already answered that one. Who has to do what to whom to make this happen? Well, they had a closed meeting right after the meeting that I attended yesterday, where they were coming up with a plan of action and milestones of how they become a regional entity. And then her last question to me was, what would you like me to do? And so I told her I'd get back to her on that one. But the MEDAC was formed as a result of the last BRAC that they had in the Hampton Roads area, where Virginia Beach didn't want Oceana to close, and the city of Norfolk didn't want, they wanted Norfolk to stay as it is, and Chambers Field, they wanted that to grow. And there are actually more planes at Chambers Field now than there is at Oceana. So and now that the fear of a BRAC has kind of abated, these things have, are not as important. But the thing that I thought was really, important is when the Admiral started talking, he's talking about all these public ventures, these public-private ventures, and the privatization of many of their utility services. He says it's really silly right now that I have an agreement with Portsmouth, an agreement with Norfolk, an agreement with Virginia Beach on police and fire services. He says, gosh, it would really be, if we ever regionalized, it would be good if we could consolidate those. And then the big thing was, I asked him about St. Julian's Creek. Well, we're looking for real estate here. We have acres and acres of real estate over there at St. Julian's Creek that are totally underutilized. I don't know if everybody's walked through there or driven through there, but they've got deep water piers there. They have acres and acres of stuff. They got two major cleanup sites there that are capped, but not, this shit is there forever, but it's capped, so it's not, going into the Elizabeth River. But, he says, hey, I would really like to do two things. One, either trade property near the shipyard, for parking for parcels of land there, and it's just a city to federal government transfer, or I'd like to offer 99-year leases to companies to take this property, the piers or whatever's, and sign a 99-year lease that's renewable. Or I'd like to just, give it to you or sell it to you. And so, I think when you look at, you know, the amount of land, when, again, I go back to my first meeting here was when you said our paucity of large tracts of land was our number one problem in the city. Well, shit, you got acres and acres of it there. And of course, we share it with Chesapeake, it's on the boundary of both cities. So it was just one of those things that I just wanted to advise you, not, come up for a decision or anything. But right now, Mr. Moore said, since you're on the PPIC, how about you representing the city of Portsmouth at these meetings? I'm a non-voting guy. I don't get to say anything. I report to Elizabeth right now. I console with Mr. Moore, and I'd just like to make you aware of my activities. So that's what I wanted to say.
Did you say yes? When he talked about he wanted to give us the property?
Yeah. Well, the answer is, when I was looking at this wind thing that they gave us after our last meeting, I mean, you look at that, and those are deep water piers over there that we used all the way until Vietnam. I mean, basically. I mean, it doesn't need to be dredged. They just need to be fixed up. And I just think that there's lots of people that want at this meeting or in Portsmouth. And we just talked about, a small parcel, but there's tens of those over there. And of course, there's a lot of old asbestos, lead-ridden buildings over there that they would love to give you, but I don't think we want to take them. But that would be an individual choice. And talking to Mr. Moore, I thought, what's the EDA? What's your thoughts on this? What do we want to do? What do we not want to do? But just being part of the conversation, the city being part of the conversation, is something that I think we need to do. And so, if we're offered membership in this new combined Hampton Roads MEDAC, M-E-D-A-C, I think my recommendation to Elizabeth is going to be that we do it, and that if there's any activities that happen, I'd love to report them out to the PPIC.
I 100% agree on that, and I think we all know that we've had our eyes on that St. Julian site for years. Yeah. We've never really been able to figure out who to get to really open that discussion with the Navy as far as, if we have to go to our senator, congressman, whatever. I think this is a great avenue to open those discussions and just see where they'll go. I can tell you from my business in terminal operations, I have any number of people coming to me saying, do you have any sites that we can use? That's a gem down there. And we definitely need to keep that avenue open. I say 100% we go for it.
Okay.
No, I think that's wonderful that you brought this in. And to Ned's point, we've tried to make that connection before, and with little or no success. But when we were talking about, Jim Salmon's and that property and all those things, we kept bringing up that's such an underutilized piece of property. It's obvious the Navy doesn't want to use it anymore, and so that's that we'd love for that to be brought to this body, and I'm sure Mr. Moore would as well. And again, it's just like this piece of property now that we just did a resolution on. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, that was just a far-fetched discussion. And here we are today, hopefully going to contract on that piece of property. So I think that's exciting news, and we'd love to bring that to the PPIC if that suits the city needs.
Encourage dialogue, absolutely.
Especially as just another venue to reach into the Navy, because it's NAVC, NAVFAC, I don't know what that is.
SPAY-WAR is there too.
SPAY-WAR, so, and all those flag staffs is just to navigate for Mr. Moore to figure out what admiral can say, yes, I'll move forward with something.
Well, that guy's name is Rear Admiral Chip Brock.
Even yes to an office call.
Right.
That's key.
Create a dialogue.
Well, I was thinking about, I mentioned to the Admiral yesterday, would he accept a meeting, an invitation to come to this meeting? And he said, I'd be glad to. He said, can you make it 8:30, not 8 o'clock?
I think we do that. Actually, yeah. I think we can accommodate that.
Well, can we get that on an agenda soon to have him come in and talk to us?
We can do that.
I'll take that for action.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wonderful. Only other question is, anything else happen with the rental capacity for Northern Virginia that we did? Do we have to do anything else with that?
If they're up in Fairfax right now, they need approval from the Fairfax EDA and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors.
But just hadn't gotten.
If that comes through, it'll be back next month.
Okay. We just didn't hear anything.
Good question. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great.
Anything else?
We've gotten so much done, we probably ought to have these meetings once a week.
If we can get a quorum, yes, sir, we can.
Yeah, well, those apologies were sent out. And I do apologize to
No, you're
everyone in this
fine.
body. I had said I'd be here, and then that morning I got a panic call from a captain, and I was off and running about 6:30 in the morning, and never even. Anyway, so
You're
my
fine.
apologies.
You're fine. We will. Our job as a staff is to make sure that you have something to discuss. We don't want you to just meet to meet. And again, I think we're starting off the year the right way to make that happen. So we will work with Mr. Peterman to get the admiral here and the folks here from the Navy. We will hopefully have an update maybe next month about the bond issuance, and we will go from there.
I am enthusiastic. This is what I hoped. I feel more energy, more activity, and I mean, Mr. Moore, thank you, and we're here to help. And you know, how do we help the city move forward?
All right.
We're here to serve.
All right. Thank you.
Nothing further?
Nope.
We're adjourned. Thank you so much.